Good evening. Thanks for joining us. This is NTD Business, and I'm Paul Graney. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen pushes for a global minimum corporate tax rate. She says it's to level the playing field across nations. The global minimum is part of the Biden administration's infrastructure spending plan. Elon Musk says his Texas workforce will grow by the thousands very soon. He's going to need more houses to meet the demand. And secret contracts revealed. A new study sheds light on the Chinese regime's secretive international lending program, adding to concerns about debt traps. That and much more coming up on NTD Business. The stock market got a boost on Monday from reports of a boom in the services sector. The Institute for Supply Chain Management's monthly index report jumped to the highest level ever recorded, 63.7. Any index above 50 means the services sector is expanding. Means pent-up consumer demand could finally be here, maybe. March marked the 10th straight month of growth in services as the industry begins to rebound from the pandemic. The rapid growth in the U.S. services sector follows other signs of economic recovery like new orders, inventories, and employment. President Biden wants to increase the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. Of course, that would make America less economically attractive for big business. But don't worry, the Treasury Secretary has a plan. Janet Yellen wants other countries to agree to keep their tax rate high too. She wants a global minimum corporate tax rate and says she's already talking to G20 countries about it. NTD's Evelyn Lee reports.
We're working with G20 nations.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said Monday she is working with G20 countries to agree on a global minimum corporate tax rate.
Together, we can use a global minimum tax to make sure the global economy thrives based on a more level playing field.
Yellen was speaking to the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. The global minimum tax is a key pillar of President Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure plan.
President Biden's proposals announced last week call for bold domestic action, including to raise the U.S. minimum tax rate and renewed international engagement.
The plan calls for raising the U.S. corporate tax rate to 28%, but a higher rate would put the U.S. at a disadvantage to other economies, so they want to get other countries on board to implement strong minimum corporate taxes as well. It would be done through a global deal on a minimum rate.
Recognizing that it's important to work with other countries to end the pressures of tax competition and corporate tax base erosion.
Yellen says she wants to end a 30-year race to the bottom on corporate tax rates. However, the Nonprofit Tax Foundation says reduction in corporate tax rates have plateaued for more than a decade. When the U.S. cut the federal corporate tax rate in 2017, it was only moving to the average. The foundation estimates combining federal and state, the U.S. tax rate on corporate income is 25.77%. In comparison, the average corporate rate among OECD countries, excluding the U.S., is 23.4%. Under the Biden plan, companies' income from countries that don't have a minimum tax won't enjoy exemptions. The administration says the plan will discourage the shifting of jobs and profit overseas. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
Biden and the Democrats say the infrastructure plan is needed to spur the economy and the high cost is worth it. But conservatives aren't convinced. Now a top Senate Republican is pushing for a much smaller infrastructure plan. He says Republicans will support Biden's plan if it's just focused on physical infrastructure like roads and bridges. NTD's Tom Ozimek reports.
Missouri Senator Roy Blunt, the fourth highest ranking Republican in the Senate, told Fox News Sunday that if Biden cuts his new $2 trillion infrastructure plan by around 70%, Republicans would back it.
I think there's an easy win here for the White House if they would take that win, which is make this an infrastructure package, which is about 30%. Even if you stretch the definition of infrastructure some, it's about 30% of the $2.25 trillion they're talking about spending.
Blunt argued that only around $615 billion of Biden's infrastructure plan is directly related to infrastructure. It includes a $174 billion investment in the electric vehicle market with the goal of a nationwide charging network by 2030. It'll also ask Congress to put $400 billion towards affordable housing and community-based care for aging Americans and people with disabilities. It also calls for $213 billion to build and retrofit affordable and sustainable homes, along with hundreds of billions to support U.S. manufacturing, bolster the nation's electric grid, enact nationwide high-speed broadband, and revamp the nation's water systems. Republicans have come out in opposition to Biden's plan, saying it combines needed spending on roads and bridges with climate change initiatives and social services. Tom Ozimek, NTD News.
Elon Musk could use some of those retrofitted homes in Texas. He says he's hiring thousands of people for Tesla and SpaceX facilities there, but that means more demand in an already booming housing market. NTD's Phil Zhou reports.
Elon Musk tweets urgent need to build more housing in Greater Austin area. Median home prices in Austin are up 20% to nearly $400,000. The number of active listings is also down a whopping 74% year over year.
He's worried about housing. He needs to call me and I'll put his heart at rest.
Musk is looking to hire over 10,000 workers for his gigafactory in Texas. He's also calling for top talent like engineers and technicians to work for his proposed SpaceX facility, also in Texas.
Once we knew that he bought it, we went ahead and submitted the site plans the following week.
Nicknamed the Oracle of Austin, Ari Rastegar saw this coming. He's already building thousands of new homes in the Austin area to meet the demand.
We're putting Tesla charging stations in every single house that we're building, and we're going through the underwriting now to put his solar panels for Solar City on top of all the buildings.
Musk claims that he will create a city called Starbase, which is an emerging SpaceX community. He says this new concept will also grow by the thousands within the next year or two. Phil Zhou, NTD News.
Phil Zhou just mentioned that listings in Texas are down over 70% this year. That's partly thanks to the CDC's federal eviction ban that stopped landlords kicking tenants out during the pandemic. But the Texas Supreme Court just overturned that decision and told Texas courts to stop honoring it. It's the first time that's happened anywhere in the country. And it means that new and paused eviction cases in Texas can now start to move forward. The CDC argued that the eviction ban was needed to curb the spread of the CCP virus. But tenants could invoke the ban whether they suffered from virus-related hardships or not. The Biden administration supports the eviction ban, which is set to end on June 30th. Markets rallied today with the Dow and the S&P 500 both closing again at record highs. The Dow rose 374 points, 1.13%. S&P 500 gained 58 points, or 1.44%. The Nasdaq added 255 points, or 1.67%. Technology stocks powering much of the gains. Tesla shares climbing over 4%. Had better than expected deliveries last week, as we reported. Gamestop fell after announcing a new sale of its stock. More on that in just a moment. Treasury yields mostly lower again today. Oil dropping about 4% after OPEC Plus on Thursday agreeing to hike production from May until July. As I mentioned, shares of GameStop fell today after the video game retailer said it may sell up to $1 billion worth of new stock. It's trying to make the best of that 900% surge in its shares from the Reddit-driven rally earlier this year. Fred Kadamai reports.
GameStop is seeking to take advantage of the tenfold price spike in its shares this year, but Wall Street does not like that idea. Shares of the video game retailer dropped sharply Monday after it said it may sell up to $1 billion worth of additional stock. The company said in a filing with regulators it'll sell up to 3.5 million shares and use the proceeds to accelerate its shift to e-commerce. That amounts to about 5% of its outstanding shares, according to Refinitiv. Analysts note a share sale would dilute the value of the company's stock. GameStop was the epicenter of a trading frenzy that saw amateur investors drive up the price of so-called meme stocks featured in Reddit chat groups. Others, such as cinema operator AMC and carrier American Airlines, have already sold shares. News of GameStop's latest plan to sell more shares sent the company's stock down as much as 13% in early trading Monday before paring some of that loss.
The Supreme Court says Google doesn't need to pay Oracle for snippets of code that it took to build its Android operating system. In a 6-2 decision, the court decided Google did not commit copyright infringement. The court says Google only took what was needed to create Android, and it says enacting copyright infringement in such a case would risk harm to the public because it would make Oracle a gatekeeper for the code. Oracle unsuccessfully argued the practice denies developers fair rewards for their work and could ruin the software industry. The company wanted Google to pay $9 billion for using the code. The court didn't weigh in on whether application programming interfaces or APIs are generally copyrightable. Sorry to tell you, but your Facebook details could be on the dark web. Details from more than 500 million users have been found available on a website for hackers. The information appears to be from several years ago, and it just shows the vast amounts of information collected by Facebook and other social media sites, just how vulnerable it is. Maha Al-Barawi reports.
The private information of more than 500 million Facebook users may have been compromised, and an unidentified leaker says they are offering the data for sale for virtually nothing. Alon Gal, the co-founder of an Israeli cybersecurity firm called Hudson Rock, says that the information appears to be the same set of Facebook-linked telephone numbers that's been circulating in hacker circles since January. It's being sold for a few dollars worth of digital credits on a well-known site for low-level hackers. Reuters hasn't been able to verify the information, but Gal and some journalists who have seen the data dump say they've been able to match phone numbers of people they know. He warns that Facebook users should be on the lookout for possible social engineering attacks in the coming months. In a statement, Facebook said the data was very old and related to an issue it had fixed in August 2019. An attempt by Reuters to reach the leaker over the messaging service Telegram was not immediately successful.
Good news for Apple and Samsung today. Their biggest rival, LG Mobile, is exiting the mobile business, controlled about 10% of the market. The company says it will manufacture devices until the end of May to meet promised supplies. After that, it promises to continue warranty services for existing users, but won't add any new cell phone customers after July 31st. LG says it'll continue research and development in the mobile technology sector and maintain most of its apps and services, but the company's press release called the cell phone market, quote, unfruitful. Apple unfruitful? Dunno. In vaccine news, the US government is blocking AstraZeneca from using the Baltimore facility that botched 15 million vaccine doses. It's putting its rival, Johnson & Johnson, solely in charge of the facility instead. The Baltimore factory previously produced CCP virus vaccines for both AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. The botched doses incident occurred several weeks ago when the factory reportedly mixed ingredients for the two different vaccines together in error. New York Times reports that the Biden administration's move to oust AstraZeneca from the facility was done to avoid future mix-ups. It's the latest setback for AstraZeneca, though. The US previously criticized it for using outdated data in its vaccine trial results. Its vaccine hasn't been approved yet in the United States. UK Prime Minister says the next stage of lockdown easing in England will go ahead on April 12th. It comes as the government announces trials of vaccine passports at some large events. Here's NTD's Jane Worrell with more.
A drink outdoors, a trip to the zoo, and that much anticipated haircut. Things we can look forward to as the Prime Minister confirms England will enter the next stage of easing on April the 12th.
And on Monday the 12th, I will be going to the pub myself and cautiously but irreversibly raising a pint of beer to my lips.
Scenes like this, a sight that a couple of years ago wouldn't have appeared strange, may return in some settings, as the government says they will trial vaccine passports at selected large events, including the FA Cup final, though passes won't be required to enter retail shops and pubs on the 12th of April. The certificates could be used to show you've had the vaccine, had a negative test or already have antibodies against the virus. For overseas travel, ministers say this won't be allowed until May the 17th at the earliest. Foreign holidays are banned in the UK, with people facing a £5,000 fine for going abroad without a good reason. The ban on foreign travel will be replaced by a traffic light system, with countries around the world rated as red, amber or green. It's not yet clear which countries are in which categories. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
A new study shines a light on the Chinese regime's secretive international lending program. It says Chinese-owned banks try to get paid before other creditors. And that goes against what Beijing agreed to in the G20. NTD's Patrick Hayden reports.
A database of China's loan contracts to developing countries shows unusual terms in providing loans. It's made up of 100 Chinese loan contracts over 3 years with 24 low and middle income countries. Researchers found that the contracts include clauses that prevent borrowers from revealing the terms of the loans. They also give China the option to request early payment and require that Chinese state-owned banks be paid before other creditors. A senior fellow at the Center for Global Development, or CGD, Scott Morris, says the contracts raise questions because they go against the G20's agreed common framework, which is designed to help poorer nations recover from the pandemic. The CGD says the study is the first systematic evaluation of the legal terms of China's foreign lending. China is the world's biggest creditor, accounting for 65% of official bilateral debt worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Morris says most of the contracts forbid countries from restructuring loans on equal terms with other creditors, but he did say China may not enforce those terms. The Chinese Foreign Ministry did not immediately reply to a request for comment. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
Japan's central bank starts testing its own digital currency today. It's not the only country trying to modernize its financial system. Federal Reserve is doing it too. One Japanese official says they don't have a concrete plan to issue a central bank digital currency, but they're testing it anyway. Central banks around the world are also considering them to ward off challenges from decentralized cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and speed up domestic and international payments. While China seems to lead the pack right now, Japan seems to be making faster progress, but this phase of tests alone will continue till March next year. Still to come. You trying to get rid of an old car seat? Well, Target will take it and give you something in return. And hope for the movie industry. A new Warner Brothers movie smashing box office records. That and more after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? We're spending late nights uncovering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year. Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
Target is once again offering coupons for people who bring in old car seats to recycle. The event runs through April 17th at all locations. Now it's contact-free as well. Shoppers can drop off old car seats in a box and then get a digital coupon when they scan a code using their mobile devices. The coupon is good for 20% off a variety of baby gear. The store says it will accept damaged or expired car seats, but if your car seat is still in good repair, you might want to consider donating it instead of recycling it. And talk about a level up. A classic Super Mario Bros. Nintendo game has sold for $660,000. It's according to Heritage Auctions. The 1985 copy is said to be the finest copy known to have been professionally graded for auction. This particular game was purchased in late 1986 as a Christmas gift. The owner put it in a desk drawer, forgot about it for 35 years. Now they're rolling in cash. The previous world record for a copy of Super Mario Bros. Was $114,000. That was set in July last year, also by Heritage Auctions. Godzilla vs. Kong tore up the weekend box office, offering hope that Americans are ready to return to movie theaters. Jason Albano reports.
The American monster film Godzilla vs. Kong brought new hopes to the flailing cinema industry, shattering domestic box office records since the global health crisis began. In its opening weekend, it raked in $32 million, almost double that of the next highest opener, Wonder Woman 1984, in December. That's despite it also being available on demand for HBO Max subscribers at no extra fee, though it is unclear how many have streamed it. And while more than half the cinemas across the U.S. have already reopened, many are still operating at a reduced capacity. The Warner Brothers movie is the fourth in production company Legendary's so-called Monsterverse, a shared cinematic universe featuring characters Godzilla and King Kong in separate movies. The latest release is the first of this series in which the two are pitted against each other. But like many other films, its release was delayed as cinemas shuttered last year. David A. Gross, who runs the consulting firm Franchise Entertainment Research, says that the weekend ticket sales were strong despite still difficult conditions. He says that while the numbers are half of what they would be under normal circumstances, it shows that the act of moviegoing isn't going away. At the international box office, where Godzilla vs. Kong opened last weekend, revenues for the monster mashup have surpassed $236 million.
Looking forward to going back. That's the latest business updates for today. You can still catch NTD's Evening News with Stephanie Cox at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.